Harvard building because they're all red and all brick. And that's because this is a much newer building and was built in 1972, which isn't actually that recent, but considering that many Harvard buildings were built in the 17 or 1800s, like the dorm I lived in my first year was built in the 1800s. This is a very new building for Harvard comparatively. It houses the departments of mathematics, statistics, and history of science, so it doesn't quite have as much history to it, given that it's recent and an academic building. But if a student has any sciencey course, it'll probably be in the Science Center. But if they have any really big course, it'll also probably be in the Science Center, because this building has some of Harvard's largest lecture halls in it. It also has lots of teaching laboratories, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but there is a teaching laboratory at the very end of the main hallway that has walls that are entirely glass. So if you want to stare at Harvard students looking into microscopes, you can definitely go to the end of this building and do that. One of my favorite things to do at Harvard, I look every time I pass by. There's also a cafe and the Cabot Science Library through these windows right here. Someone recently donated that giant globe. Sometimes it displays the Earth and sometimes it just displays things like red brick. I think that's supposed to be like a comment on Harvard only having red brick, but I have not gone and poked around at it yet. But people have asked, so I decided I'd mention it. And in terms of academic experience, Harvard requires about 32 courses over the span of 4 years, and these include a little bit of everything, including the core or general education program, which is why I took a course on medieval history and art despite studying psychology, since Harvard's a liberal arts college. And about a third of our courses will be in our major or concentration, which is just what we call a major, but it's the same thing, we just wanted a fancy word. And the rest of them will be electives, which are random courses taken on the basis of interest. And these are often some of the most fun academic experiences because they don't have very many requirements and aren't too serious. For example, one of the electives that I had brought in a psychic, which is something that I think would only happen in a Harvard elective. And my favorite course so far has also been an elective in the anthropology department. And that is because the anthropology department is very interactive, as you can tell by the digging up of Harvard Yard that they do frequently. Much more than psychology. So I was able to go to lots of labs and lots of museums and look at and touch a lot of bones, which was very cool. Harvard also has lots of extracurricular opportunities. We have about 400 to 500 different clubs and activities each year, and these include lots of different things, and some of them are very specific. For example, I write for a review on health policy, but just health policy, no other policies. That's the entire review. And if students want to get funding to create their own club, they can also do that if they can't find anything that they like in all the other 500 of them. Because of that, I am part of the Harvard Texas Club. Texas is the only state to have a club at Harvard, and that is because someone who really loves Texas, which all Texans do, decided to create a Texas club. And now, Harvard also has lots of sports. You would not think of sports when you think of Harvard, but surprisingly, we have lots of them. We have the largest Division I collegiate athletic program in the United States, with 42 of these teams. I can't say we're the best. We don't necessarily get recruited and they kind of let anyone play, but we do have a lot of these teams at least. And now, in a huge aesthetic contrast to this building, we can walk over to Memorial Hall. If there's not a sign on the door telling me I can't go in, I will, but they've frequently been putting a sign on the door, and I like to think that's because of me, because I don't think any of the other tour guides take groups of like 50 people in there. But if there's not a sign, I will also go in.